All right. Good evening, everybody. All right. Good evening, Katrina, T, Nikki. Hey, hey. All right. Your Grace, Sewell, good to see you. Good evening, everybody. All right. All right. All right. Let's get rocking and rolling tonight. All right. We are, all right, in our discussion. It being the Passion Week, this is our third night being on. We were well, Tuesday night we were on. Wednesday we did it in Bible study. Tonight's Thursday. And of course, I covered Sunday and Monday when I was on Tuesday. All right, so I'm gonna cover this tonight, and then tomorrow I'm gonna cover some too as well. In our prayer tomorrow, don't forget we have a prayer gathering and communion tomorrow at 12 noon. All right, KJ, Katrina Johnson, good to see you. So tomorrow we're 12 noon having prayer at the church, and also taking communion on Good Friday tomorrow at 12 noon. Okay. And then, of course, we have our choir rehearsal. If you would like to be part of the choir, that's happening Saturday at the church 9:30, and then Sunday we have our Resurrection Sunday celebration. All right, Kalila, good to see you. All right, as y'all can tell, I'm losing my voice, so I'm gonna try to rest my voice as much as I possibly can over this weekend. All right, yes, choir. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of read a few scriptures. Like I said, I'm not gonna be super long tonight. I'm going to read first Mark 14, then I might dive a little bit into um, John 14, okay? So, Mark 14, chapter 12. Now, you have to understand something too. Looking at something like Mark 14, in Mark 14, there are a couple of days in this one chapter. So I just want to make sure I point that out because there's when the woman is anointing Jesus in verse 3, when we get to verse 12, we're 2 days later. Okay. So I'm gonna read Mark chapter 14, verse 12. It says, and the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, his disciples said unto him, where wilt thou that we go and prepare that thou mayest eat the Passover? And he sent them forth to his disciples, said to him, go into the city, there shall meet you a man bearing a pitcher of water, and follow him. Whatsoever ye shall go in and say to the good man of the house, the master saith, where is the guest chamber where shall I eat the Passover with my disciples? And he will show you a large upper room. Isn't that interesting? He will show you a large upper room, furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. Okay? And his disciples went forth and came into the city and found as he had said unto them, and they made ready for the Passover, and the evening had come, and the 12. And as they sat and did eat, Jesus said, verily I say unto you, one of you which eateth with me shall betray me. They began to be sorrowful and to say unto him one by one, is it I? And another said, is it I? And he answered and said unto them, it is the one of the 12 that dippeth with me in the dish. And the Son of Man indeed goeth as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Good were it not for that man if he had not never been born. And as they did eat, Jesus took the bread and blessed and brake it and gave to them and said, take, eat, this is my body. And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they drank all of it. He said to them, this is the blood of my New Testament, which is shed for many. Verily I say unto you, I will drink no more of the fruit of the vine until that day that I drink it new in the kingdom of God. All right, so there's so much context that happens on Thursday. I'm going to try to run through this all within 15 minutes, but there's so much that takes place on this Thursday. Okay. Now, the first thing, too, as well, we know about the Passover. Now, let me explain the Passover. The Passover was the celebration that Israel would come together. They would celebrate. Now, there were multiple feasts that they celebrated. We know that Pentecost, the Bible talks about the day of Pentecost had fully come, meaning the manifestation of what Pentecost would do, or what it was designed to do. But Pentecost was when they begin to see the first the ear of the corn of the grain that they would plant. Okay, so Passover was a time when they would come and remember and celebrate the fact that when Moses, the children of Israel, had come or were coming out of Egypt. Okay, so they were coming to take Passover in celebration, and there's a lot of things that go into Passover. I don't have time to go into it, of all the things that they would eat at the time of Passover, what it symbolized, what it dealt with. But one of the things that they didn't know, that at this time, or they were knowing, Jesus was explaining to them that they were coming into a new covenant, that they weren't simply just taking Passover, because you have to understand that the Passover that you saw um, in the Old Testament was literally a type and shadow of what this Passover would be. Number one, in the Passover, they put blood on the door. That blood on the door was symbolic of them being covered by the blood eventually of Jesus. It was a shadow or a foreshadowing of what the real Passover would do. But they were operating in, again, of the tradition of them celebrating Passover for God bringing them out of Egypt and bringing them into the wilderness and going into a promised land. Okay, so they always celebrated that, they always governed that, they always honored that God allowed them to be a people unto him. And so when they come to sit at Passover, which is done, everyone did this, all of Israel did this. They will find a place to prepare it. Sometimes people will take Passover with their family, some people will do it with their friends, some people will invite certain people over to do it, but they always honored this. And so at this time, this is unique too as well, because of when Jesus died, because it's all part of that feast. That's one of the reasons why, which I'll talk about this on Sunday more in depth. A message left for dead, of when Jesus was crucified. So on that Thursday night, Jesus begins to have a discussion with them. And in John chapter 14, 15, 16, and 17 also goes into the depths of that conversation. These are things that Jesus left with them, said to them, explained to them, talked about, I'll go to prepare a place for you. He also talks about too as well, I believe it's in, I didn't get a chance to read it too as well, when when Peter washes, or Jesus washes the disciples' feet, tells Peter that you must um, um, allow me to wash your feet, and talks about how you have to allow me to do this because you'll have no part with me. Jesus was also emphasizing the fact of being a servant in the midst of what he's doing. And so after they eat, after they celebrate the Passover, and he tells them that you've come into a new covenant, and what I'm giving unto you now is what I am and what I am doing for you. So this is the beginning of you all understanding that Passover isn't just simply Passover to honor Moses. This is also now the new covenant that I'm introducing you into, that has been already set even before the original Passover was set. This was set that once sin came to the earth, that Jesus was slain. The Bible talks about he was slain before the foundation of the earth. So when this took place, Jesus is bringing them into this covenant, understanding that when you guys drink of this, this is the blood that washes away the sins of the world. And this bread also represents, or is, my body. And he told them to eat it, take and eat of this, is my body. And so they broke it, they took of it, they ate of it, I don't think, not fully comprehending the capacity of what they were stepping into. And so the Bible says that when they go out, they go to the Garden of Gethsemane. It's all happening in the same night. When they go to the Garden of Gethsemane, they go. Jesus tells them to sit. He tells them to watch, sit here while I pray. Now, they were supposed to be praying and watching at the same time. But what they were doing is they were sleeping. Okay. And this is when Jesus says to them, y'all can't wait and watch with me for 1 hour. And I believe that if they were in tune with Jesus, watching and praying, I think they would have had the sensitivity to understand what was taking place. This is why when God calls us to pray, when God calls us to seek his face, it's not a time to slumber. It's a time to be active and to understand what God is doing, especially when you feel the burden of prayer. We should always pray. But when you begin to feel the burden of prayer, I believe it's also a heightening of sensitivity to understand what God is doing in that moment. So Jesus tells him to watch and pray. And as he's praying, one of the things that Jesus says to God, he says, Lord, you know, he understood and he felt and he knew what was taking place before it happened, because he could feel the burden. He could feel the weight of sin, even though he's never sinned before. He could feel the weight of people's lives, even though he hasn't yet died for them. but he can feel something he's never done. That's a lot of weight. He can feel something he's never done. And so, and he's not just carrying it for someone like himself or those that are around him. He's carrying it for the entire world. And he says something to God. He says, Lord, let this cup pass before me, but nevertheless at thy word. And so, as Jesus in the midst of that, once Jesus steps into it, because he steps into it once Judas goes, one of the things that Jesus tells Judas, outside of him saying that whoever dips with me will be the one to betray me, when Judas goes, Jesus tells him to go and do it quickly. So Judas goes to the Pharisees. Now, mind you, he goes and tells them where he is. Now, there was a plot to arrest Jesus at night because, number one, it was illegal to do that. What they did was not legal. Okay. They illegally arrest Jesus based upon accusations, but also the courtrooms were not open at night. So the Pharisees had a private court hearing at night. The Roman government was not aware of it. And they were not allowed to do this, especially at the time of celebration of Passover. So they were doing it thinking that they were being kind of clever, sneaky, and having Judas in the midst of it, and them doing this, that people will be focusing on Passover while they were doing something quietly in the dark. But you always know what you do in the dark, especially when it comes to things of God, it will come to light. So they're doing this. They arrested him. They put him on trial that night. And then they kept him overnight and brought him. And they didn't really try to keep it open. They tried to keep it quiet. But then that next morning is when they brought him to Herod. Okay. And so I'm not going to talk more about that. I'll talk about that tomorrow. But again, all of this happened at night. Washing of feet, all the instruction Jesus gave them about abiding in him, about him going to prepare a place for them, the Garden of Gethsemane prayer, Jesus carrying that burden, all of this transpired, and then him being arrested and being betrayed all happened that night. So Jesus wasn't arrested Friday. He was arrested Thursday night, taken by the Pharisees, taken by the Sanhedrin, taken by the governing people of Israel. Okay. Not the heathens, the governing people of Israel took him that night and then, beat him even to a degree, not fully like what we see later on of what Herod would do. But they took him, arrested him. And again, he took on this burden for us. And we listen, every year I always do my best at this time of the year to watch the Passion of Christ to remind myself of what Jesus did for us, especially that Thursday night of everything that took place going and then into Friday and what he did on Friday morning. And so, again, they plotted. Judas betrayed him. Jesus prayed, went to the Garden of Gethsemane. They took the Passover meal, which we talked about, and Jesus explained to them that this is not just the old covenant of what you guys celebrated and what you guys honored concerning Moses. You can still honor that, but I brought you into something new. And what I brought you into will be forever consistent and operating in your lives. So again, I wanted to make sure we just kind of go this day by day so we can understand and see what was taking place, what transpired. And then tomorrow I'll share what happened a little bit on Friday. I don't want to go too deep into that because I'll correlate one message. Saturday ain't much to say outside of what Jesus did concerning the keys, the gates of hell, all of that. I'll talk a little bit about that on Saturday too as well. All right. So thank y'all for joining me just for a few moments, as we break down, like I said, every day of the week of Jesus going forward. All right. So listen, tomorrow we're praying noon in person, and we'll probably stream it online too as well because we know some people have work. So we'll stream it online as well. All right. God bless you. Heaven smile upon you is our prayer. And I'll see you tomorrow for noonday prayer. Y'all take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening.